Okay, and so Dennis and Igor are going to give us a MR walkthrough. Thank you.
Hi. So finally, we're gonna talk a bit about the AI that was happening in the group since has happened since recently, where we started doing the things. So the very first thing that has been taken by our group was the functionality, which is called the Explain This code. So what this functionality does is you select a code, when you view the blob, this question mark pops up, and then you can you get the explanation from the AI. We send the request to OpenAI, and we get the explanation of the code telling what this code does. Unfortunately, I figured out that something doesn't allow me to use this functionality on GitLab.com. Oh, because it's not GitLab.com. That explains it. So I will try to demonstrate it, and hopefully it will work out. So we just go to, I don't know, let's go to modals. I have no idea where I'm going. So let's just, okay, this is complex enough for me, and I still don't have the question mark. So
Probably I'm not for you on production.
Yeah, it's not enabled for me. So yeah, I don't deserve that. So the functionality is you select the code, then next to the blind page. Oh, okay. I'm actually, my local instance is fired up. So okay, I will show you on the boring JavaScript file. So if you don't mind, we select the file or the part of the blob. There is the question mark persistent on the screen on the line, on the first line of your selection. So it doesn't matter how you select, it will be whether top down or down to top, it will be located on the very first line of your selection. And what it does is it creates this code explanation modal and sends the request to OpenAI to get explanation for this code. Once it's done, it will return this. We do not support streaming at the moment, as you could see in ChatGPT, but so we wait for the whole thing to be returned to us, and that's pretty much it. That's how this feature works. In this particular case, technically, Igor will tell you a bit more about the backend implementation. But what happens here is, so for those who might have looked into the OpenAI modals. In this case, we're employing the chat modal and the reason, even though this is not chat, the reason to use the chat modal is quite simple, or there are two reasons. First, this will come to the chat mode eventually, and I can demonstrate it in a bit if there will be interest for that. But we are talking about the current state. So this is the current state. So it will grow to the chat mode, but the cost of using chat modal comparing to the text modal is nearly 10 times cheaper. So we are trying what we can in order to minimize the costs both for us while testing and for our customers when they use this. We played with the different parameters. At the moment, we have parameters set, and they are baked into backend implementation, with the only exception, the prompt itself that we sent to the model is still controlled by frontend, but that might change soon. So the functionality is pretty straightforward, just exactly as you might have expected to get this in ChatGPT. But the interesting thing is probably hidden in the backend, and I will hand it off to Igor to tell us about how it is done in the backend. Oh, right. Before we do this, I have to mention that there are two backend connecting points we have now. So while we develop a feature, for example, now I'm working with the chat functionality. So the way I develop it, I have to figure out, before we bake in the parameters in the backend, I have to make sure that I have to know what parameters we have to bake into the backend. So what we do now is we keep all the parameters on the front end while doing technically the prompt engineering. We figured out how to tweak the prompt in order to get the best possible result. And then once it's done, we will move that prompt to the backend as well. However, there are two entry points. The first one is the experimentation REST API. That's the REST. And then there is the abstraction layer, which is GraphQL. So while we're developing in our local GDK, we connect to the experimentation API, but when we move to production, we have to switch to abstraction layer, which is GraphQL, which is a bit inconvenient, but technically, as Igor will explain this later, technically they both go to the same point, and using abstraction layer locally is probably fine. But I won't steal this information from Igor. Sean, you have a question.
I do want to interrupt you, but before you hand over to Igor, I was just wondering, could you show us the front end code that does this?
Yeah, sure. Let's we can do it here. This is the GitLab. So right. So let's get here. So all the code is within EE folder, because we have this only for the ultimate customers available. It's actually in the specs, probably not the place I wanted to get to. Let me just components. App assets, right. So if we go up here in the app assets JavaScript, there is the AI folder, which contains components. This is the view. These are the view components. GraphQL. This is to connect to our abstraction layer that I talked about a bit, and then some constants and utils. So the components are called AI Genie. So the main component is called the AI Genie, and it contains both this block and this question mark, which is shown here. However, this big component is the separate one. It's called AI Genie Chat. And this component is pretty simple. There is no magic happening here. This is intentional because this chat component has to be reused is intended to be used by several groups. For example, the search group is working on Ask Tanuki and functionality now. So the plan is they will use exactly the same component, just pass in different parameters, different props. And then all the magic with sending the prompts happens in the root AI Genie component. In this particular case, we have request code explanation. So we select the code here, we click the question mark, and that's where the request is being sent. In this particular case, we send it to our abstraction layer, to GraphQL implementation with just two parameters. So messages, because we are using the chat module, and chat module needs the messages. It's the array of different messages, including the responses from the server. We can get to that at the end if the time will allow. And then resource ID, I think Igor will explain better why we need this resource ID for GraphQL.
And where are the actual prompts? How do we just feed it the code in? I mean, how does it know to explain it? Yeah.
At the moment, the prompt is in utils here. So generate prompt. So we take this string. We take this string, explain the code from. So in order to give the model a bit more context, we pass the file path so that the model would know whether it's maybe it will get some clues from the file structure or from the location of the file. So we ask explanation for this file path in human understandable language presented in Markdown format. Why Markdown format? Because it's just easier to output on the screen. So we fine tune. In the beginning, I played, and technically we output in HTML, right? So that was natural for me to, in the first place, to construct the prompt so that it would return me the HTML right away. However, all the HTML tags will count towards the token limitation. So users and us, including, will have to pay for all those HTML markup elements to be passed back and forth. So to avoid this, we just request markdown file format and output HTML ourselves. No big deal. And then this is already like part of the fine-tuning the prompt, because OpenAI is really keen on eating up the tokens by duplicating the code that you sent to it and providing the title, coming up with the title. So we explicitly say do not do that, and then we just pass the selected code. That's it. So with this prompt, everything starts here. And
right, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. So with that, let's get to Igor, and Igor will tell us what does he do with this prompt in GraphQL. So I'll stop sharing.
Yeah, let me share my screen. Probably I won't deep dive into a lot of details, but I've sent 3 merge requests from the abstraction layer. Yeah, it's an AI enablement team. Yeah, we have a separate team which actually works on AI integrations, and the team does a great job to create some reusable components. So we could use those components to build endpoints that are specific to our particular use case. Yeah, and actually the GraphQL endpoint or request looks like this. Yeah, it's a mutation which is called AI action, and it accepts. Oh my God. Sorry about that. What happens? So I'm here. Yeah. And this mutation, it actually accepts parameters, arguments related to our specific endpoint. So if we quickly have a look at the implementation, AI action, it looks like this. This is an implementation of the mutation, and it dynamically defines arguments for a particular functionality. For example, this method, it returns like either summarize notes or explain code, and those methods are dynamically defined here. The input type is also dynamically defined. So let me quickly show you the implementation for explain code. It changes the sorry, I forgot to mention. Then this mutation actually being executed, and this service is actually the one that calls our specific service. So in order to implement new endpoint, new functionality, we start from this service and implement and specify our specific service that will do all the logic. Or maybe, sorry, I should have started from the whole beginning. Yeah. Currently, we have, in order to experiment with OpenAI features, we actually have a REST endpoint. And the REST point is as simple as it just performs a request to ChatGPT, to OpenAI API. It just performs an OpenAI API request. So we have a simple REST API endpoint, and anyone can just, if they want to create a feature, they can just experiment with the feature. They can just use this endpoint. The problems with using this endpoint for everyone, in production, is that OpenAI API request can take a lot of time, even more than 60 seconds. And our Puma timeout is 60 seconds. So sometimes, so it's not recommended to put such long long HTTP requests in our to perform them synchronously, to put it in our synchronous request. One of the solution probably would be to move such executions into workhorse, but currently we do it like a different way. We're doing it using Sidekick and GraphQL subscriptions. So in order to perform these long running requests. So if you have maybe in the future, you have such a use case that you need to perform a heavy operation, which is long running, probably runs longer than 60 seconds. You naturally you want to perform it in Sidekick. But if you need result from this heavy operation, you need to communicate it somehow to like front end to the user. You use GraphQL subscriptions in order to communicate this information to the user. So it's something that probably should have been used for update fork, sync fork functionality, because the operation is really slow, really long, and performed in a Sidekick request. Maybe we will refactor it in the future. So this OpenAI request, they are implemented this way. Sidekick job is scheduled. Sidekick job performs an OpenAI API request, and the result of this request is communicated to front end using GraphQL subscription, which is basically a WebSocket. So maybe let me first show you an example. For example, we have this file. We want an explanation for this line. When we click on it, GraphQL request is performed. And this request instantly shows that there are no errors. The job was scheduled. That performs this OpenAI API request. But actually, the result is actually goes via WebSockets. So maybe let me reload the page and start again. We click on it. We subscribe to a particular channel, to a particular message, and waiting for the response. And then using WebSocket, it can be slow, but actually we received the response, and now we have this result, which is then rendered here. And it seems that GraphQL subscription instantly unsubscribes after the operation was performed. So I had an obsolete information. I thought that WebSockets are discouraged for GitLab Rails that are not scaled, but it seems for GraphQL subscriptions, we started like using them quite actively, for example, for merge requests page or some other page that are updated dynamically. We're using GraphQL subscriptions, and maybe this is the reason why it's cheaper than like usual WebSockets channels, because it's just subscribes, waits for feedback, and then unsubscribes. Sean, you have a question.
I'm just wondering, as soon as you got the regex file open, is there a more complex regex that we could give to it to see how it, because it handled that pretty well.
You want an example how to use it for
something? No, something harder.
Is it harder enough?
Well, it looks like it's not that hard.
It can cope with pretty intense
really? Okay.
regex. Yeah.
Okay.
Just because it performs a request to OpenAI, and if you try to play with OpenAI ChatGPT, it can provide some impressive results. So it's
okay.
Yeah, even complex regular expressions should be handled quite well.
Great, looks great.
Yeah.
Sorry, and just another while I'm speaking, I guess, but this section where it says you're not allowed to copy any part of this output, blah blah blah, is this for staff only or for anyone?
This one?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's a publicly visible message, and yeah, it was introduced due to the legal reasons.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
technically, this is at the moment this message is available to everybody who has access to this functionality. But however, since we control who has access to this functionality, and we didn't really do anything with restricting this, because I wouldn't expect this to sit here for really long. Like it's to prevent this early day sort of misuse according to the legal obligations we have. So it's more to the GitLab team members, but it is supposed to be gone later on.
It's currently alternate only, right? This feature.
Yes.
Yep.
It's like Igor has the list of all the voodoo magic that has to happen for one to be lucky to get this functionality. Because it's just like the list, like I don't have it on GitLab. I don't know why. It's just like the flag for me is not enabled apparently, but that's really challenging to get access to this functionality.
I mean, it looks great. The UI is great. It looks like it's easy to work with. The output's great. Really great job. In a very short time, right? 2 weeks you did this in?
This one?
Yeah.
It was ready over 1 weekend technically.
1 weekend.
And then it was then it was the real job for backend. Yeah. So Igor did tremendous job in the backend. Yeah. Then there was the front end support and like a lot of things to refine. But the prototype has been delivered over the course of a weekend.
Amazing.
And now we are going to the chat functionality. That's mind-blowing.
Yeah, Patrick, you have a question?
Yeah, maybe I missed it, but do we cache any of this in any way to prevent like over asking anything to ChatGPT? Like, do we cache like with the code that we pass through as key, or how do we do this?
So currently, yeah, the quick answer is no. Yeah, and but we plan to. There are plans, for example, storing these responses, yeah, for particular lines. There are plans for rate limiting these requests. So there are some like protective techniques that are planned to be like implemented, but we don't have it at the moment. And yeah, and a quick note regarding the previous question about how long did it take? Yeah, Denise, did a tremendous job. Let me rephrase you, for creating a POC. Yeah, he did it really fast, but we needed extra time to do it like right. Yeah, with this abstraction layer, with a backend, and it was released on Friday.
It's been literally the whole GitLab team working with AI was working in parallel. I think when we started in the group, there was even no experimentation layer yet, and then as different parts of the puzzle were getting together, we as a group were delivering different bits and pieces, and then technically it took 2 weeks to get to production. Yeah, it was a bit less than that. We moved it to production.
Yeah,
I have to
Vasily,
drop off, but I will hand over the controls to someone else. But I have to leave myself. So, but please continue.
Yeah,
Okay,
I
so
think we mostly finished. Yeah, but Vasily, yeah.
yes, I just wanted to say it's like a really great job. Thank you for working on that. Looks pretty cool. I just wanted to add some like of the things that I discovered myself about it. It's first of all was about this using the WebSockets. I was not aware that we actually use them like anywhere. So it's kind of gives some ideas about some possible optimizations we can do. Another thing, it's about some kind of like security reliability point of view, which Patrick partially covered. Like, so we create like one sidekick worker for each request at the moment.
Yeah, yeah.
And we don't have any limitations, so it's like possible to.
Yeah. We don't have the limitation, but like the only limitation that we have is the like explanation that it's like first iteration. Yeah. And also like the feature is limited. It's not like publicly open, and like it's being gradually rolled out, and only for ultimate users. So yeah, there are plans to introduce like rate limiters, but yeah, it works like this at the moment.
In general, there's a lot of work has to be done probably before we actually can claim that we can go live with this for a broader audience. At the moment, it's with a control group, but before we introduce somebody who might want to just go on and abuse it full size, there are a lot of things that have to be done probably.
Yeah, and one more thing about the security. So it should be some kind of like API token that we send to the OpenAI like API to authorize ourselves. Like, is it possible to kind of like abuse this endpoint, like sending some unrelated requests through our connection or whatever? Just.
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, currently this access token, it's instance wide. Yeah, and it's specified in settings. So the feature is this is the reason why the feature is for one of the reasons why the feature is for ultimate users only. So it's not like because with this current endpoint, it's actually like a free ChatGPT like endpoint for anyone to use. So this is why it's like so limited. And mostly is once done for the first iteration, I would say, to move quickly. We send like the whole prompt. We send the selected text, but the selected text is also limited on backend because it's not recommended to schedule like large portions of text inside Kik. So it's okay for the first iteration, but probably we should consider like sending maybe lines instead, lines, numbers, and calculate the text on backend. Like, there's room for improvement, but
So thank you very much for working on that. Looks really cool.
Thank you. Yeah, and as I mentioned, I sent the links to the merge request in the notes. If you decide or have to implement a new endpoint, these are like good examples to follow, I think so. And thank you very much for listening.
Thank you.
Yeah, Dennis, maybe you want to wrap up, or maybe
Yeah, let's wrap up.
So
no, it's like it's there are a lot of ideas that are in the air at the moment, and there will be plenty of work because right now we try to split the work in the front end among 3 engineers, and then offload it all to Igor for backend support. It's like we have several entry points, and then everything goes to you get it. So, but I think at some point we will have to, because the plans are pretty ambitious, we will have to scale the current approach somehow. But yeah, everybody's welcome to contribute, of course. It's and it's a lot of fun. It's very rewarding to see this happening. Thank you.
Yeah. So see you later then. Yeah. Have a nice week.
Have a great one. Bye.
Bye bye.